Hi, I'm Chris Peck. I'm a general partner here at Pace Capital, and I have a lot of thoughts. Over the course of my career working in venture, I have collected a set of frameworks that I iterate and improve on. These frameworks help me process an onslaught of new information, particularly as the ground shifts under a lot of companies that are building. I've published some of them online, and writing them down, sharing them, actually ended up being an amazing way to start conversations with a lot of people. One of the frameworks that I have is thinking about consumer businesses and how they harness the 7 deadly sins. I actually think the 7 deadly sins get a bad rap. I think about them as the 7 core motivators. They're really why anyone does anything. The thing about the 7 deadly sins is that they've really withstood the test of time. Haven't really changed. They're deeply ingrained in the hardware of our brains. Let's recap. What are the 7 deadly sins? Pride, envy, lust, gluttony, wrath, sloth, and greed. You can trace back largely every successful consumer company into one or more of these as the core engines that drive usage. Virtually all of social media is pride. It's the way that we see ourselves. It's the way that we want to see ourselves viewed through the eyes of other people. No post on social media occurs without a small or loud scream for validation. Instagram would not exist without pride as a core motivator. Envy is one of the core drivers for Instagram as well. Envy ends up being the most monetizable at point of capitulation. When the seed of envy is planted, that is different from when the flower of envy blooms. As a platform trying to create value, or rather capture value, you kind of have to be there when the flower blooms, and you're relatively unattached to when the seed is planted. We're programmed to view ourselves on a relative basis to others. As social animals, we compare ourselves to each other all the time. And it's this really effective loop that, you have voyeurism and narcissism as these, jab hook combo that largely drives perhaps infinite usage on any of these social media applications. If you look at what the algorithm surfaces, it surfaces things that particularly induce emotional response. It's stuff that largely increases the cortisol level of the user because that is often correlated with longer use times. Sloth is a particularly convertible motivator into economic value capture. People are prone to want to be lazy, and then people are also prone to overvalue their time to justify being lazy. Uber is a really good example. DoorDash is sloth and gluttony at the same time. Pretty much all of the food delivery applications are gluttony. I would argue that Netflix is a form of gluttony as well. I'm old enough to remember when TV was not binge watchable. And then we got Netflix and on-demand content. The invention of the autoplay next episode, crazy, amazing. I mean, terrible for humanity, but such an incredible insight into what people want to do. And all of a sudden, you could just couch rot for 12 hours and watch an entire season of something. Gluttony is an incredibly powerful motivator. Lust is pretty straightforward. I mean, pretty much every dating app, most porn sites. The interesting thing about lust is OnlyFans really highlights this. No one on OnlyFans is looking for a long-term life partner. And so it's actually way more monetizable. I think the publicly stated numbers that OnlyFans was doing recently was something like $6 billion of transactional volume. Most of the 7 deadly sins are not regulated, but I would say the most regulated sins are greed and wrath. Greed is hard to monetize as a platform because largely the best business model to monetize greed is being the quote unquote house. You offer a means of degeneracy and you take a rake on all of the speculation that happens. What are examples of this? Obviously the casinos in Las Vegas, arguably the brokerages, the online brokerages, Robinhood. The biggest challenge with monetizing greed is it's usually very, very, very regulated. Greed left unchecked has a high probability of zeroing out societies. Countries, civilizations are really incentivized to put guardrails up and not allow greed to run away. Wrath left unchecked usually resolves itself. Greed left unchecked can actually scale to society level threatening scale. As society becomes more and more productive, fewer and fewer of our hours become labor hours, and more of our hours become leisure hours. Of the 7 deadly sins, sloth and gluttony are the sins that stand to gain the most from the allocation of the incremental leisure hour. The real check that should exist is founders asking themselves if they have a savior complex. And if they find that they have an ego-driven savior complex, it is most likely an indication that they are being overly paternalistic, and that paternalism is trying to fight gravity. One of the challenges with a lot of consumer companies, they look at the 7 deadly sins and they see them as vice rather than what they truly are, which is motivators, and think to themselves, oh, I'm a founder that's trying to create value in the world. And part of that is trying to be paternalistic and get people to do something that's good for them long term. I think tragically, the reality is that there's no money in virtue. A clickbaity headline is that we are addicted to our phones and we spend too much time on our phones. And I think everyone can largely agree more time on social media is worse for our mental health. And so there are a lot of applications that have existed and attempted to try to mitigate the time that we spend on our phones and on social media. None of them work. It's because actually the mental health problem exists because that's exactly what we want to do. We want to do it so much that the mental health problems are an acceptable part of the outcome. Trying to get us to do something else is actually never going to work. As a consumer investor, you would do really well betting against parents. Whatever parents want their kids to do, you should bet on the opposite of that. Parents don't want their kids to watch TV. Parents don't want their kids to play video games. Parents don't want their kids on their iPhones or technology. It's because parents inherently are paternalistic. They want what's best long-term for their kids, regardless of what their kids want to do in the short term. That is fighting gravity. Kids turn into adults. Adults no longer have parents. Adults get to do exactly what they want to do without a paternalistic control or check and balance. All of the things that kids want to do, adults want to do too. There really aren't a lot of ways to harness virtue and make money, the way that there are ways to harness sin and make money. I think technology can both strictly better service these core motivators and also increase the average quality of life. So for example, the invention of the car, pretty much it's sloth, right? You make it easier for people to indulge in the thing, but maybe that actually leads to a new baseline of the aggregate behavior that allows society to be collectively even more productive.